Long ago, the world of kids' television lived in blissful ignorance. Then, everything changed when the Avatar arrived. This took audiences by storm, and even though its episodes were great, it had a lot to prove. But for those watching, they believed it would change the world.
Join us as we explore this exceptional series that is Avatar: The Last Airbender on this episode of Script or Screen.
Well, Zach, thank you for joining me once again.
Thank you for having me.
It's,
as the permanent guest on this series.
You're very welcome. For those who don't know, the uninitiated, my name is Christopher Kitchen. I am joined always by my co-host, Zach Strackman.
Hello.
This is Script or Screen, an entertainment and media podcast on the internet where we talk about any and all things fantastic, such as Avatar: The Last Airbender. And we'll get into that. But Zach, how's your week going? What have you been up to as of late in this Corona season?
Well, in these Rona times, as I call it, I've been working as best as I can, and I do a lot of writing, as you know, and just trying to find meaning in it all. How about yourself?
Same kind of, funny situations. I'm one of the few whose work has been very, I said one of the few, I should say one of the many whose work has been very much displaced because of these things. So it's given me a lot of time to kind of work on the podcast amongst other creative avenues and projects. And actually, it's also given me a lot of free time. Like, I was, how we said last time that our first movie-going experience would have been going to see something like Tenet. My first one is actually going to see this New Mutants movie that just came out, which was
the much delayed, much anticipated New Mutants.
Exactly. What was it, delayed 3 times since 2017, 2018 or something?
Yeah.
I think its original release was 2018. And then finally we went to see it. It was a movie,
It existed.
It wasn't unlike my last theater going experience, which was also for a comic movie of sorts, which was actually in March during the beginning of Rona time in the good old US of A, where my girlfriend and I went to see what is this, Birds of Prey movie?
Oh yeah, okay.
So we went and saw that, and it was just us two in the theater. And going to see New Mutants yesterday. What is this? It's August 29th as of this recording. So we went and we were 2 of 3 people in the movie theater, which was both great and also just weird at the same time for like a new movie's release.
I wanted to also take just a short minute, not to bring the mood down, but as of the time of this recording, the entertainment world is reeling from the tragic news of Chadwick Boseman's passing.
Oh my. Yeah.
You dropped that article on us last night, and I legitimately thought it was a joke because it didn't feel real.
Yeah, that after, I think I mentioned this, like I was scrolling through my Facebook feed last night, and I came across an article from the website WeGotThisCovered.com, which is one of these, not forefront in terms of entertainment news, but they occasionally they'll post rumors or things like that. And so when they had this, I was like, this can't be real. This is fake news or something.
Of course.
And a quick Google search later, I find the Variety article and New York Times and all these things, and I don't know. This is probably one of the most shocking things to happen. Out of everything that happened this year, this was incredibly unexpected.
It
really sad.
Came out of the blue. He was not public with his cancer, and so yeah, I mean it came out of nowhere. There will be this is going to shake, I think, the world of film pretty hard. I know there are broader implications for what will happen to, let's say, say the Marvel universe, because he was Black Panther. He was the face of a $1 billion movie
Yeah.
So to lose such an immense talent like that is pretty heavy. And
I
we're
mean, it's just yeah, no, it's just incredibly sad. Like, it's kind of humbling to know that in a way, like, he could spend his last moments with his family, like the
yeah.
most important, like his support system and things like that. But it's just, as someone who's had to deal with cancer in the family,
Yeah.
like cancer, you
Yeah.
know, like, and what, colon cancer? I want to say that's like one of the worst forms that it can take inside of a person. What is it? Colon, pancreatic, and then there's one more. That is just it.
I mean, I would say any of them are
Yeah, any
awful.
in my experience with having family members who've had to deal with cancer, it's just it's always been it's always been a kind of like a trouble. Like
Hmm.
it just is the worst kind of thing. You pointed it out yesterday, like, and I feel like I've seen a lot of people point this out, like, that during like interviews and things that we'd see Chadwick, and you look at him and it almost seems like he's kind of dazed or tired in certain interviews, but still trying to keep his
His
you know
composure.
exactly, like, you don't realize that he's been battling this terrible disease for the last several years.
And I think when you look at some of the articles, and I know I even thought it myself at the time when you would see him on the red carpet or in these press junkets, he would be doing the Wakanda Forever pose, and his face just was not the face of someone happy. And I know at the time I often thought, well, this is a man who maybe is maybe he's already getting over the superhero craze. Maybe he's had enough of Marvel, and it's a shame to know that it was actually much worse than that.
Yeah,
And our thoughts go out to Chadwick Boseman's family, and the world has lost a king.
yeah, I would agree. I like one of the sentiments that people brought up. Although Black Panther is not the only work that he's done, it's just definitely resonated with a lot of people. But one of the notes that I've seen people posting, or one of the clips, is that it's where T'Challa sits next to Scarlett Johansson's character of Natasha Romanoff and says, "Death is not the end," or in my culture, death is not the end.
Yeah.
And it's you know, as there are believers out there and some non-believers, I believe that as well. He will forever live on.
That is I've seen that scene being shared around a lot. The one also I've seen, and for today's world, I think it was a very powerful scene from the very end of Black Panther when he's at the UN and he is giving his speech about how we need to build bridges and not barriers. No, it's just powerful, and it is a real shame.
Yeah, I agree.
But
But
we want not to bring this whole podcast down. We just wanted to pay our respects to a very talented actor, and I think with that we can get back to our originally scheduled program.
so it's funny that we talk about this idea that death is not the end for this guy, because that kind of plays into the role of this idea of the Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? You know, this idea of this show that kind of, as we said earlier, it hit people, it hit the world by a storm. The audiences. So, I mean, for those who don't know, Avatar: The Last Airbender. What can we say about the show? What is the
Well,
best kind of synopsis that encompasses everything?
it is an animated series created in large part by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. It ran from 2005 to 2008 and drew heavy inspiration from anime and from Eastern mythology. and had a short run, but in that short time, I think delivered some of the best world building, character writing, and action to really grace the world of American animation.
That I'd agree with that. I also feel like it's when you say the idea that the show had a short run, I always like to think it wasn't that it was cut short or anything like that, but it's just it told its story within the confines of 3 seasons, about 60 episodes total.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily seem short at all, but just compared to most shows that we see now have like 10 or 12 seasons, like very established, like they had an entire story that they were able to put into these episodes and kind of complete, really. It's like with enough exposition and action and just things like, and any kind of like loopholes were really just like, though there was a follow-up television show almost 10 years later, there was more like just a really, or it ended 10 years later, excuse me. It was just a really well-contained world. It's like, there's other, when you look at animated programs, there's other shows I feel like kind of fit that mold, like this one that was on Disney Channel, Gravity Falls by Alex Hirsch.
Gravity Falls is great.
Just 2 seasons, but it's like a contained story. It's like he always planned it like or it's like 2 or 3 seasons, I don't know. But it wasn't anything big. It's like he had the story he wanted to tell, he told it, and he didn't want to kind of oversaturate with anything else that he didn't feel would the show could really cater to. Or things like that.
I have always had a great respect for creators of long form storytelling that have an end in mind from the beginning and don't feel the need to drag their story out longer than they need to. And when I think of that, I think of shows like Breaking Bad and and Avatar. I mean, like, it didn't need to be any longer than it was, and at no point in it does it feel like its short length is sacrificing anything to make it such a short series.
So I like how you compared it to Breaking Bad there. And in a way, it reminds me of a conversation we had while planning the episode. Talking about like Avatar being maybe one of the greatest series ever created, but it's also, in my mind, like a hidden gem, because you wouldn't think that an animated show, like I don't think animated shows attract much attention outside of people in certain age groups. Like I know my dad has never seen the show, and I doubt he'll ever watch it. Same thing like most like I would say adults really. They look at cartoons or animations more like for kids rather than for them as well. But the fact that a show like this, maybe that was originally intended for people of the ages between, let's say, 7 and mid-teens, mid to late teens, like the fact that it includes such incredible themes and stories, and just it deals with a lot of heavy topics.
It really transcends its genre.
Exactly.
I know. I think we've both been in agreement when we have gotten some of our friends who weren't initiated into the series fandom prior to its release on Netflix. We would say to them, listen, it's a kid's show, and early on it's definitely it takes some getting used to, because it is, or at least in the beginning, definitely targeting a young audience. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it takes too long for the series to really kind of shed that skin and present itself as a, for all ages story. And in some cases, excuse me, and in some cases, really not for kids in some spots, which I think... go ahead.
No, I would agree. Like, I think the show did a good job as establishing, in terms of like establishing itself like as like a children's program, but it didn't let that kind of stop it. Like, while sure in 2005 it became a hit amongst people our age and in between and things of the sort, like, and there's an age gap between you and I, right? There's like what 4 years
Something like
between
that, yeah.
us.
I stopped counting.
but like, well, I mean, when you're a child, like the age difference between an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, that 4 years, that's important, like in terms of development and like interests and things like that. Like,
Right.
I'd say that kind of thing matters, but it didn't let that age gap and things stop itself from also evolving, because as the audiences kind of grew to watch the show, so did the show kind of grew into the things like, all right, what can we give our viewers outside of just kind of like very one-dimensional like tones, feelings, and characters. Like now they started, after the first season in 2005, the second season, they got it into a lot more depth, really. I feel like the second season really stands strong.
Oh, yeah.
Like, or above the rest of the entire show. And we'll get into that in a moment. But like,
I want to emphasize, at the time of this show coming out, nowadays it's so common to see shows like this. You have the original Avatar, you have Legend of Korra, you have Steven Universe and Gravity Falls and Adventure Time, and shows that are marketed towards children, but that do carry heavier themes and do present moral questions that
they just have like, they're underneath the guise of like interesting and just very kind of like poppy art in a way that like kind of like attracts certain,
of course, but at the
people,
time for Nickelodeon and its contemporary channels, the Cartoon Network and Disney Channel. I'll say Cartoon Network not so much, because Cartoon Network was pretty big into anime of that time.
I also think they got to have things like Flapjack and like other sorts of things, kind of helping them out at the time.
But as far as like Nickelodeon, there wasn't anything like this. Shows didn't function on a long-term progressive story where if you miss an episode, you have missed probably some vital information. Most Nicktoons at the time were serialized, and so then this show comes along with very slick, lively animation, a story that insisted that you pay attention, and like you said, as the series would go on, present some very heady themes and some interesting alternatives of mythology that I think kind of challenge Western sensibilities in terms of good and evil.
That's true. So I think we should also kind of include, in terms of like production-wise, though the show is by like American creators, it was actually animated by 3 different Korean companies.
Yes.
So, and those companies are, excuse me here as I review the names of them again. They're JM Animation, DR Movie, and then the last one.
I don't know if it's MOI or MOE.
Yeah, I believe it's MOE or MOI, maybe Animation. We'll let everybody else figure out.
Yeah, tell us we're wrong. They
So it's like a great partnership between like these it's not, because most American television programs, or even like they'd be animated either here or even in Canada, right? When you look at, or actually I've seen some that use like European animation companies as well. So for this to kind of utilize that versus like I know other animes also use or at least traditional animes use like Korean companies for their animations.
It's pretty
It was just
common.
kind of like great collaboration.
And I mean, if you do read into it, there's a lot of workplace politics that kind of dominated the Korean animation industry. That Brian Konietzko, who handled more of the animation side of the creation of the series, whereas Michael Dante DiMartino handled the writing, where Konietzko really tried to work as best he could with his team, avoid kind of the workplace environments and maybe the toxic attitudes that had become common in the Korean industry at the time. And this is featured a lot in kind of like the behind the scenes for the series, but he was very specific on how he wanted certain character moments to play, so much so that he would record himself acting out scenes for reference for the animators. I know
Yeah.
one example being from the episode The Waterbending Scroll, when Aang goes into the shop and he's trying to buy, I don't know if he's trying to buy the scroll or he's trying to buy something, but he has that great line where he's like, what say you to 1 copper piece and then 2 copper pieces, you know? And there's video you can find of Konietzko acting that out in the exact same motion. And, you know, there's such a passion that went into it, and you can really feel that in so many aspects of it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I want to give like a little story synopsis a little more. So this is coming from the Wikipedia of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The series is centered around the journey of a 12-year-old Aang, the current Avatar and last survivor of his nation, the Air Nomads, along with his friends Sokka, Katara, and later Toph, as they strive to end the Fire Nation's war against other nations of the world. It follows the story of Zuko, the exiled prince of the Fire Nation, seeking to restore his lost honor by capturing Aang, accompanied by his wise uncle, and later that of his ambitious sister Azula. So, you know what would be great is if we read the intro to the
You mean
to the show.
The opening that is like the perfect thing. If you've never watch an episode and have to drop right in, the beginning that tells you literally everything you need to know right away.
Yeah, that I just feel like, what did they say? Long ago, there was the Avatar.
The four nations lived in harmony, and everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Okay, yeah. So it's water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the four nations lived in harmony. Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of the four elements, could stop them, but when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years later, my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang, and although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone, but I believe Aang can save the world. Opening music, and then previously on Avatar, do the episode.
And it's a great way to, you know, if you don't know what you're getting into, or if you need a refresher about what show you are watching, you can't do better than that. It is really efficient with just, here's who we are, here's who this person is, here's the central conflict, and now
like, it almost allows itself to be a show watched serially in a way. Like we said, even though it also has organized itself to do, you know, be more than just that. You know, but like the situations that some of these characters find themselves in, and you know, though there is the overarching story, and then they also give you like the previews of what you missed, and here's the key moments from the past couple episodes. Like, I really feel like it tried to be something more than just anything else. Like, it could be a serial, but it could also be like a drama. You know, like they really did a great job of like combining all different facets of television at the time.
Yeah, I like that. You know, they cast a wide net, and I think it speaks to how popular the show has become, which now in 2020 we know it was, you know, the top of Netflix's top 10 trending entries for several weeks. And remained in the top 10 for a very long time. And now Legend of Korra, its sequel series, which, you know, we'll get to at another date, is now, I believe, at the top of that list or maintaining in the top 10. So, I mean, these shows have a huge fan base. And the reason why is because the writing is exceptional. The characters are three-dimensional. And the animation is really great. I know by 2020 standards, it can be a little off and a little. I know the aspect ratio is a little.
I was going to say that the worst thing about how it holds up, and then rewatching on so actually before it went on to when it went back on Netflix in the summer this year, is when I rewatched it first, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. But then I realized, wait, the entire show is 4:3, like standard def. They like not even by the last part, like, or last book. were they able to like kind of update that? Like, oh man, that sucks. I don't remember that at all. But in the end, you get past it, and once you get past some of like the like why the things were, in 2005, and I let nostalgia bring you in, rather. Like if you're a fan of the show, let that get you back in the show, and then you realize as an adult, viewing on these things, like, oh wow, like this is incredible. But I also feel like do you think there's a new population of children now that are discovering the show for the first time?
I hope so, because I it pains me that there are people who don't know of the series and don't and are missing what this has to offer. What's interesting about the animation? One thing I this is not my take. I heard this in a video somewhere, but just a really cool thing with the animation is you look at any one frame, any one shot of the series, there's always motion. Something is always moving. Someone is either, gesticulating or, moving about in the scene, but there is never a still shot. And I think that really, the series comes alive like that. It really, it leaps off the screen. So...
but that's I don't want to say that like everything's like the most amazing thing. There's some things that are a little more, at least in the let's get into the first book. Right?
Yeah, well,
book 1, Water.
Yeah,
like
so
it starts with a little bit of camp in some of the way things like kind of move and are said, but like that's how they were making it for the audience of the time. So
I compare it kind of to Harry Potter in that the early Harry Potter books are very kind of silly and even that carries over to the movies of the Harry Potter series, where the early Christopher Columbus movies are very, very silly. The antics and the music and the direction is all very child friendly. And then as it goes on, when you get into the later entries, it grows with its audience.
You mean when they get what is his name, Quran in there? For Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yes.
Yeah, Alfonso Cuarón, dude. Like that, talk about changing the game.
Right. So I think Avatar does the same thing, where in the beginning it knows who its initial audience is going to be and plays to that audience, only to then kind of grow and mature with its audience. So yeah, in the first book, it's definitely very kid friendly. And I think, I know for myself, I don't know about for you, but I find that in the first book, having rewatched the show several times, there's a lot of like episodes I can live with or without in book 1 because they do feel a bit inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. The Great Divide. But
I'll tell you what. So we start at the beginning of the series. Funny enough, one of the head creative powers in book 1 of Avatar is a very special man in the Star Wars universe, Dave Filoni.
I thought you were going to say Mark Hamill.
Well, no, I wish. Well, Mark Hamill comes to play in the series later on. But so Dave Filoni, before he moved on to Star Wars Clone Wars, he worked on the Avatar, which is why he didn't move or continue in Avatar, because he worked on the movie form, and then he worked on the series and got locked into Lucasfilm as George Lucas's protege, or so to speak,
his estranged son.
They talk about having that kind of relationship that he's just like they're not less of friends, even though they've known each other and worked with each other for years, but it's like he just goes to him like that's his sensei,
Right. Well, yeah,
like, which is kind of interesting.
According to IMDb, Filoni directed 9 episodes of the first book of the first season. When we say book, we mean season for those who are not Avatar fans yet. We hope we can change your mind, but yeah, the seasons are referred to as books.
And they also kind of take place like book 1 is Water, where Aang's already the Airbender. He's the last Airbender, right, of his nation. And so the order of teaching or of obtaining the other forms of bending or skills that he has to get is water, earth, and then fire. So just looking at this show, yes, book one, rewatching it, it's not that I hate it, because I don't. In reality, it's like I look at it and I'm like, like it's just the other books are just a lot stronger in terms of everything. Book one's just it's very much for children. It's very one dimensional in the things it sees. However,
at least at parts.
Yeah, but there are a lot of things that I feel like they do spill over to the later parts in the book. Like a lot of establishing things that come here. Like all the character introductions. First off, we get like dynamics. But then you also get other, maybe a little more. There's smaller supporting roles, but they end up playing a big part in the later episodes and the later seasons, including very pivotal moments.
You're talking your Sukis, your Jets.
Exactly. Other riveting characters, but
I think
it was this, as you like to put it, because you always tell me like it is the stepping stones for why we got such better things in the end, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but where would you want to begin? More like stories or character?
Well, we can talk stories and character, all that. The one thing I think book one gave us, and I say this in not literally book one gave us, this series gave us this, but book one, obviously, from the very beginning, from maybe the first scene, we get our introduction to the bending. The four elements: water, air, earth, fire. Each one, there are characters who can manipulate these elements, and much like the characters themselves, we see the art of bending evolve and develop over time. And I think that was one of the big hooks. I think that's the thing that kind of keeps you watching in this first season. Is there some really cool ideas of the bending. I think we'll get more into it as we talk more in depth about the series, but I did want to touch kind of going back to the animation real fast. Every bending was based on a real-life martial art. There is Tai Chi for water bending, Hung Gar for earth bending, Northern Shaolin for fire bending, and Bagua for air bending. Yeah. And it gives each bender a very unique, almost like identity.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so like, what is the bending in this world? For us who don't know, it's just this power, this ability that gives each of these characters control of a specific element, as we kind of were saying earlier.
Right, with the one exception being Aang as the Avatar, the one who can master all four.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that's one of the best things book one kind of gives us. But cruising along, we have I would say the depth that I think it gives these characters, even very early on, I think is very interesting. Zuko in book one is obviously our bad guy, but we're almost rooting for him by episode 3, the Southern Air Temple, when Admiral Zhao is introduced as our secondary antagonist.
Yeah.
And is meant to challenge Zuko in his pursuit of Aang. And it's cool that, Zuko, who is very much designed in the first season to look like a real bad dude, he's got a scar and he's got this ponytail and a lot of sharp edges on his outfit, that suddenly he is not top of the food chain anymore.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, he's also has this incredible voice actor by the likes of Rufio from Hook,
Dante
Basco, who has just kind of, he's almost become, he really has done a great job of embodying Zuko in real life from times. Like, he loves the fandom of the Avatar world, yeah. and just like the kind of person that everybody looks at him to be, and also his arc throughout the entirety of the series. But like his arc in the first book, it's really. It then, in a way, it becomes the most intricate versus all the other characters. Versus Aang and the gang, Team Avatar, as they call themselves.
He's the most dynamic.
Yeah.
Real fast, the voice acting talent in this series is amazing. You got Zach Tyler as Aang, you got Jack DeSena as Sokka, Mae Whitman as Katara, like you just said, Dante Basco as Zuko, and maybe the most unparalleled of any of them, Mako Iwamatsu as Uncle Iro.
Lovely Mako, who's also of Samurai Jack fame, amongst other amazing things. I think he was also a character in The West Wing. And
he did. I think he popped up for an episode or two, but
yeah.
But he has that unmistakable voice, to the point that while I think Greg Baldwin replaced him after Mako's passing.
Yeah, but it's funny enough because I feel like he's also said, Greg Baldwin has said this, that he's always lived off like the shadow and rode the coattails of Mako as like his voice double, you know, because even like while they were playing characters like in any show, like Greg Baldwin has always stepped in wherever Mako has had to step down, even while still alive. Because as we know, we lost Mako in I want to say kind of halfway through Avatar.
When he had finished recording the bulk of his work for the second book.
Yeah. That's true.
And while Greg Baldwin does an admirable job, and no one, I feel, could ever live up to the instant recognizability of Mako Iwamatsu's voice.
Mm-hmm.
He does a fine job. It's not the same. It could never be the same. But I think, that just goes to show, like, the voice acting for the series, it really helps bring these characters to life. I know Uncle Iroh, one of my favorite characters of the series. I know, real hot take, real cutting edge stuff, but
but you look at him and he is the guiding force, the character that gives Zuko like his advice. He's what is the role? I guess the writing role you would call it. Like that's his support system, kind of going around all these adventures. And though obviously Zuko and Iroh never see eye to eye, he always kind of comes in there being Zuko's biggest fan. Yeah, sure, by the end they do. But it's like, in keeping with book one, as former prince of the Fire Nation, right? Iroh was next in line, to take over. You really, and now you almost wonder why he's there with Zuko.
We'll get to that, because that is something I do want to touch on a little bit later as we kind of go through the chronology of the series, because I do think at the beginning he kind of is like just this mentor figure. He is
also comedic relief, but they're very different personalities.
Early enough that he's enough of a badass that like he can hold his own, but he does have a lot of comic relief. He's always telling Zuko to chill out, and Zuko, even though as early as the third episode comes across as even as the third episode, he's already not the biggest threat. He's not the biggest danger to Team Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
He can sometimes come across as a bit one-dimensional until we get to, I don't know if it's considered a two-parter. I consider it a two-parter, but the Storm and the Blue Spirit.
Right.
Which,
I guess starting with the Storm, I would say is almost one of the most important episodes in the show.
Yes.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure I get this correct. So The Storm was directed by Lauren McMullen, who plays a large part in the show, all 3 seasons, written by Aaron Hayes. And then the Spirit, or the Blue Spirit, directed by Dave Filoni and written by the creators DiMartino and Konietzko.
Yeah.
So I feel like their relationship in terms of the episode order and just kind of like the background, and then furthermore, like what we see with that background applied, like into the Blue Spirit, really kind of is a testament as to like, not in terms of serial episodes, but like really like connecting the two, right? Seeing those arcs go from one episode to the other, but then again, you could also jump into either one,
right,
however you want.
I love these episodes because the Storm is great because it equally between Aang and Zuko, it provides their backstory, but it shines a light on their on aspects of their character that don't really come up, more so for Aang than for Zuko, but they don't come up too often, where Aang, he was just a kid. All he wanted to do was have fun, and suddenly he is being told he is has the biggest responsibility on his shoulders, and that terrifies him, and that's something that we see carry on even into the final season.
Yeah.
And then with Zuko, you realize that this kind of arrogant,
hot-headed, even.
No pun intended, right?
But like, he also has this other side to him, that he was not always like this really damaged soul in a way.
I think that's the exact thing. Is he's damaged. This attitude is the result of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that, at the time, you didn't really get in kid shows. This is a person whose father violently injured him and basically corrupted his worldview on what he was supposed to be like.
Yeah, if anything, it's almost as if he had like a form of Stockholm syndrome in a way.
He
right?
does. He definitely has a bit of kind of loving his abuser.
Yeah, in a bit, or like just kind of like this really twisted view on what that could be. And he never really kind of understood. And it's funny that you say it's like it was kind of new ground for Nickelodeon. I can only think the only other two episodes that may have dealt with abuse, or the only other shows, might have been like Full House, and that was very like just why abuse is bad, and maybe like Hey Arnold. But again, like this one had so much detail into it, like, and then with the storm, you get that other outside of like, you get the backstory of why he is this terrible person. You then get him put in a situation where he realizes the mistakes, and like actually that maybe he is a caring person. He cares about his crew,
right?
The people that he travels the world with, and he seems so cruel to. But after he recognizes his own mistake, and then puts his own life on the line to ensure the safety of everybody around.
Yeah, and then as if that didn't immediately provide some very good and necessary depth to, I would say, our two primary protagonists of the series. We get the Blue Spirit, where Aang, hoping to, find a cure for his friends who are sick because of what happened in the storm, he gets captured by Admiral Zhao, and a mysterious figure busts him out. A mysterious masked figure who is revealed to be Zuko. And while he saves him for entirely selfish reasons, what I sometimes refer to as the Vegeta excuse
complex
of no one gets to kill you but me,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this wonderful scene in The Blue Spirit where Aang is with Zuko. Zuko's unconscious, and he says, if we had been born at a different time, do you think we could have been friends? And it does kind of speak to the tragedy of their characters, that in any other situation they probably would not have been, fighting, which we'll get to that,
But I feel like what I like the episode kind of does, like in this, we see Zuko, though he's doing this deed on, selfish terms, it almost kind of seems selfless as well, like, putting himself on the line. Like, it also provides like a nice role reversal, though we thought Zuko may have also been our main antagonist and Zhao was our, secondary antagonist. We kind of get that, like, okay, now Zhao in this episode was also been like promoted from commander to admiral, and now he's giving the orders to all the Fire Nation people. Right. Now he's even in charge of Zuko, like, and now the Avatars become his hunt, and Zuko really needs to stand down. But and it kind of heightens that relationship a little bit, and then it also kind of creates that kind of hate for the Blue Spirit that Zhao has, and that kind of caters into some of the most pivotal moments in the end of the series,
Absolutely.
or the end of the series. It should be end of the season, end of the book. We jump across a few episodes. I want to go back to the Deserter in a bit, but going into something like the siege of the North, and the waterbending master, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the waterbending master outside of the Team Avatar storyline, you get Zuko, whose ship has now been accommodated, right? Is that the word?
No. I know exactly. I know exactly what you're saying, and the word is commandeered. Yes,
or commandeered. Excuse my misuse of the English language. But and taken by Admiral Zhao as for his or it's the ship and the crew. And they decide that Zuko, he doesn't want to go, he wants to stay because he hates Zhao and what he's doing.
Right.
And so Zhao then is also revealed that, Zuko is the Blue Spirit. He sees the writing on the wall, or rather the swords.
That's a great moment. I love his eyes kind of like wide, and he doesn't say anything, but he's like, oh, this little
this
bitch.
twerp. Yeah, exactly. And so then he hires a team of ex-sophisticated pirates. They're not ex-pirates; they're still pirates.
The ones from the waterbending scroll.
Exactly, and then they blow up Zuko's ship, and Zuko's presumed dead. However, it's later revealed that he snuck onto Zhao's ship at the thanks to his uncle, and and he's gonna ruin Zhao's chance at getting the Avatar, and it becomes a lot more. It gets real, man. It really does.
I remember as a youngin', which I guess when that episode aired, I had to have been 14, maybe.
I was gonna say in 2005. How old were you? That was 15 years ago.
Yeah, my birthday's in December, so I would have been 14 probably when the show.
I would have
when
been
that
10.
episode aired. That episode blew me away when Zuko got blown up, because I was like, I did not see it coming. I didn't think that Zhao was the type of person to. I knew he was. In retrospect, when you're watching it, having grown and matured and understanding the certain tropes and rewatching, knowing what's eventually going to happen, you can kind of see the writings on the wall. He tries to attack Zuko from behind in the third episode of the series. But when I first saw it, I mean, these are the building blocks of when I knew even back then that the show was going from good to great.
Yeah. So actually, I forgot to mention this earlier when you were mentioning the comparing Avatar to Harry Potter in that way. And one of the articles I read is that actually the creators of Avatar were heavily inspired on the worlds of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and one other important piece of not mythology, but like one other trilogy of movies or something. And I just kind of found that interesting that you brought that in there. And I know you in your own writing, Lord of the Rings also kind of holds like it only gets better in a way, except for the Hobbit movies.
One day we may broach the Hobbit movies because they're not. I have a lot to say on those, but
sure.
I think let's kind of move along. I know you want to touch on the Deserter because it is a very fascinating kind of look at Zhao, at the idea of firebending in its place in the world and as a tool for the Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, this is where Aang gets a little, we finally see more of his arrogance as like, oh, I'm the Avatar, like, I just want to do things, like, his kind of carefree attitude kind of take hold of him, right? And so he tries to skip the steps. We said earlier he has to master water, earth, and fire, and also in that order, where he's like, no, I kind of want to skip to fire.
What they refer to as the Avatar sequence.
Exactly. And so, while he's still in the middle of learning waterbending, he has found a former firebending commander, admiral, general, whatever you want to call him.
Zhong.
Zhong, who, by the way, the voice talent of Zhang, I would say almost equally as notable as Mako. Forgive me as I have to Google his name, just because I feel like this voice is like, I can't even really pronounce his name. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I am looking for his name for his voice actor too.
It's Keone Young, right? I think that's how you pronounce it. So Keone Young, I just feel like when I hear, kind of it's especially when he yells like at Aang, like just kind of like the tone in his voice and like just the way it sounds. You know him from other shows. I want to say I don't want to name stupid roles, or I don't want to say
minor roles.
Yeah, but like at the time, shows like American Dragon, Jake Long, right? Like that was on Disney Channel or something. He played the grandfather, if you will. He was what else? He was in Men in Black 3. Funny enough, he was in Crank. Both of them. Dude, Where's My Car? He's actually a voice in Ghost of Tsushima.
Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, like he's Commander Sato. Exactly. Like he also I guess in Samurai Jack. From 2006,
he's had a very prolific career.
Yeah, his voice is almost iconic in terms of like kind of animated television, if you will.
Right. No, he's great, and I think he presents a good foil in his attitude of his abilities compared to, I think, some of the other mentor types and firebenders we see in the series.
Yeah, but I feel like what a very important part for me about the Deserter episode is actually in terms of how it affects like the world of Avatar, like the world building in the show, and this kind of works its way into Book 2, Earth. In book 1, there's a big idea in the entire show that the bad guys are almost very one-dimensional. It's everybody who's a Fire Nation character is just bad. Whether you're a person, someone in the army, or you're just anyone in general. Because in the Deserter they go to this village, like, oh, it's a Fire Nation village. We got to put on disguises. Like they're right. Fire Nation. They're evil. Like they even think like the guy that catches them and leads them to Zhong is a bad guy. It's like you're Fire Nation.
Right.
They flip out. And so, and outside of like people like Jet, and that this other woman in the beginning of where they meet Bato, the one that has the whip that rides
June.
Beast. June, exactly, that's her name.
And her animal is I believe known as a Shirshu.
Well, like you have some of these minor non-Fire Nation bad guys, but Book 2 in Earth, it kind of starts off like with, okay, now you see that people outside of the Fire Nation realm could also be bad guys. Let's show you like some other bad guys, some Earth Nation, right? Being bad isn't just, one color. Being bad is like, or one nation. It could be anyone, and Book 2 plays in this so well with like, you have kind of bad factions or just kind of ill-willed antagonists throughout the entirety of the book.
Yeah, the series, I think it more so in the later seasons, but it really it trusts its audience, even if they may be children, to understand that not everyone of one race or nation are inherently good or evil.
Yeah,
you'll have good people in the Fire Nation and bad people in the Earth Kingdom, or bad people in the Water Tribe, and there's definitely I know we'll get to it, but there is a particular enemy they face later in the series who I think is maybe one of the worst, and they're not Fire Nation.
Exactly.
But yeah, so the that kind of starts with the Deserter. And it's
just very obvious in the Deserter, right? They go into the town and just like everything's bad. It's Fire Nation. That's bad, And it's like it causes that one-dimensional association, right? And so when you start getting it's in the very first episode, I love it. It's this. They go to this Fire Nation, excuse me, this Earth Nation general, in the very beginning.
Are you talking at the beginning of Book 2?
Beginning of Book 2, the episode titled "The Avatar State." this general does kind of anything he can to make Aang go into the state, because he thinks that Aang should go and fight the Fire Lord already. After seeing the reaction of what happened at the Siege of the North, where Aang went into the Avatar state, he kind of fused with the Ocean Spirit to wipe out the Navy. And really, he didn't wipe it out. He just kind of scared them half to death and pushed them away, and they went. It is not of Aang's spirit.
I'm pretty sure
people.
I'm pretty sure they killed people. But he up until the second season of Korra, you think that Admiral Zhao dies. But if you take Avatar: The Last Bender as it is with no companion series, Admiral Zhao, he dies.
Exactly. But I mean, that's less of Aang doing that and more of like the spirit that did that, and like Zuko watched.
But yeah, so the Earth General in book 2, he definitely carries on.
He knows that Aang's weakness is Katara almost.
Not even almost. It just is.
It is Katara, like so he uses that weakness against Aang and almost tries to suffocate her or to.
Well,
make it seem like it does.
He tricks Aang into thinking he's killed her,
exactly.
or is going to kill her, and that awakens it. And yeah, it's a great precedent that is set that there are going to be shitty people on either side of this conflict, because war is not clean. And I think a lot of times if a children's program is going to depict things like war and ideas of good and evil, it is easy and convenient to show one side as being morally just and the other being evil and corrupt. Like, Star Wars is big on the light side and the dark side, and Avatar, it was nuanced. It said no, every person is capable of immense acts of goodness and immense acts of evil. We even see Aang at times, even later in book 2, where he is on the verge of violently attacking people when driven to that point.
I think, funny enough, when we talk about that, I like how you brought up Star Wars as the example, because it's almost as if anybody that isn't a Jedi can kind of be nuanced in a way, now that I think about it.
Well, yeah, that's like your Han Solos.
Except, like, if you're a Jedi or you're a Sith, like that, you have to be one or the other. So that's a really good criticism of that, I feel like.
We'll get into Star Wars another day.
Another day, but like when we want to relate it to Avatar, like that's so. After the events of book 1, Zuko's story in book 2 is that plight. Like, now that we've seen him capable of kind of being bad, right? How do we show that this character can also be capable of what other good can he be capable of outside of being the Blue Spirit and freeing Aang for selfish reasons? What non-selfish reasons?
Well, I like that. I like that his arc through season 2 is a very no pun intended, a very rocky one. He doesn't just go like, me good now. It's he really struggles with his identity and choosing to do the right thing in conflict with what he thinks is expected of him. And I think what propels that is the introduction of Princess Azula, voiced by Greta Lyle. She...
I would say that she is Zuko's character, but she has there's no compromise to be good. She's uncompromising in her drive. She is just kind of not evil for evil's sake. That's their father.
Well, yeah,
right?
she is a character that is defined, I think, by her control. It's
the psychology of Azula is I feel like the most interesting thing to look at.
You see it even as early as like her first introduction when she's training on the ship, and they say like, oh, it was almost perfect, one hair out of place, and she's like, no, I'm gonna do it again. But, right from the get-go, I love the idea, I know they flesh her out a bit more, but I think we know there's enough analogs in the real world of young people who are given a lot of power and a lot of clout, and it all goes to their head, and it can really turn them into these like monstrous sociopaths.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a giddiness and a glee to how evil she is at times. But it also, they do show later on that it does come from like a place of really deep insecurity. But in those early episodes, it's fun to watch her because she's like scene-chewingly evil.
Yeah. But so like in her place in the story, she takes the place of Zuko, or at least the main place that Zuko kind of filled, and like that is now our new kind of main antagonist, and then Zuko then becomes this, I wouldn't say anti-hero, but he's kind of right in the middle between Team Avatar and Azula Fire Nation bad guy. Though the Fire Nation is still used as this point of like most bad, on a line, you have one end Team Avatar and then the other end Fire Nation.
The spectrum.
A spectrum, if you will. I feel like it's much of a spectrum. I feel like they try to make it as linear as possible, or as much of a line as possible.
I think though that's while the show is clear in showing that anyone can be good and evil, even Zuko by his face turn by the end, he still acknowledges that by and large the Fire Nation is the source of a lot of the terrible crap that's going on. And so, while there are good people and bad people all around, the Fire Nation, they're long due for a comeuppance. And so as we go through season 2, I think, we get some little fun episodes that kind of, I don't think we need to talk too much about them, but like, Cave of Two Lovers,
which is great.
Avatar Day, where we get kind of some background info on Avatar Kyoshi. What I think, the episode that spawned a bunch of memes because Avatar Kyoshi is kind of a bamf. So,
she's another non-compromising, just very like it's one way. It's you die or get out of my way.
It's pretty great. And then
I want to go back when you said Cave of Two Lovers. I will say this episode's great because it gives us a small glimpse into like the world building of like how did people get to become benders? Like where did specifically Earthbenders learned their forms from these ancient blind badger moles, I believe.
So this introduces. I don't know if this is the episode that introduces it, but this is the episode I think where they really first focus on it.
They talk about it in terms of the earthbending.
Well, yeah, it really focuses on the idea that the idea of bending comes from the spiritual connection between man and nature, and that man developed the ability to bend by observing the original benders. So the earthbending came from badger moles. Firebending came from dragons, airbending came from the sky bisons, and waterbending came from observing the moon and ocean. And that's really cool because it really it's this fascinating thing of like, if someone's connection to nature and the world around them, if it's strong enough, they in turn are stronger. It's this really great, cool, awesome world building thing that kind of gets torpedoed in Legend of Korra. We're not going to talk about it right now. We'll get to there one day. Korra, I think, made some controversial changes, at least in my opinion, but we'll save that for another day. Cave of Two Lovers has some pretty
It was honestly, I feel like it's one of my favorite episodes when looking back.
It's a fun episode. I like that. They're kind of hippies, and the main dude's name is Chong. Like Cheech and Chong, that's funny,
right? But I want to go back to kind of like to Zuko, but like we will go back and talk also about like why they go back to Omashu and how Bumi cannot end up teaching Aang earthbending. He'll have to find a new earthbending teacher. He later finds Toph, who plays a major role in the series from that point.
I wanna touch on Toph in a minute because it is maybe one of my favorite moments of the series. But they go back to Omashu. They have a fun kind of adventure there. We get our first kind of in action introduction of Mei and Ty Lee, who are Azula's, you know, left and right hand ladies. Each have kind of a cool thing. Mei is a weapons expert, and Ty Lee has chakra chi blocking
Yeah.
abilities, which is very cool. She's very
And then
acrobatic. And then from there, I think the next one after that is Avatar Day, and then we have the swamp. Uh,
well, the swamp is before. Oh, actually, yeah, no. If we're going, yeah, swamp is our kind of like
well, yeah,
introspective episode.
really, I just feel like it's you know they have these some adventures in the Earth Kingdom, kind of on their way to finding this teacher, which I think the individual episodes are fine, if a bit, you know. I feel like that's still the last vestiges of season one's kind of episodic nature, kind of falling to the wayside. And I think from the episode The Blind Bandit, maybe straight through to the end of the series, I think is when the show really hits its stride. And at that point, I don't think there is a single forgettable episode in the
Yeah.
show. They might not all be as like noteworthy, but I feel like from that point, you know, up until the Blind Bandit, you have the same core team of for Team Avatar, and you have the same kind of um, dichotomy of Zuko and Iro. And then after the Blind Bandit is when you really start to see character growth come in, where Toph is, her character begins to rub off on Team Avatar. Zuko is having to really question his own
His kind of
ideologies.
place in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, while those early episodes are fun and they are very cool for world building, for me, book 2 really takes off with the Blind Bandit. I love the Blind Bandit. It is the silliest, most amazing character introduction episode, I think, of this series or Korra. I the idea of Toph is so great that she's blind, but she uses her earth bending to see
Yeah, I was gonna say
around
she's like
her.
a master earthbender,
I think
and like,
it's the coolest. I think it's the coolest thing ever. I love the effects that the show does of like when someone like touches the ground and you see like the waves go out and ripple up her
yeah.
body and stuff, and she's like, okay, that dude's over there. He's about to send a rock my way.
Don't you like when it's like Aang is kind of hopping around as an airbender? He's able to kind of make extreme jumps, and then she's like, "Where are you?" And as soon as he lands, she's like, "Gotcha." You know, and
Yeah.
then she sends something flying his way.
And you know, like Jessie Flower, who's her voice actor, just does this great job. You know, you can tell that's. I'm sure, you know, a lot of these voice actors really sound like they're having the time of their lives when they're doing this series. But Jessie Flower in particular, I feel like when she was voicing Toph, she just sounds like she is having the best time. And because Toph is just a fun character. Her bending style is completely different than normal earthbending. It is actually based on Chugar Southern Praying Mantis style. And because she didn't learn from an earthbending instructor, she learned from the badger moles that were brought up in Cave of Two Lovers. And yeah, just, you know, she comes in like a wrecking ball, and she immediately, you know, strikes a fun imbalance with Katara, with Aang, because her gruff personality is so opposite to Aang, and you know, because like that is Earth is his most difficult element to learn. We're getting into the following episodes, like bitter work, but
I you know, I feel like we're missing one of the kind of it's a small part and just kind of interesting. It's just a fun bit that along came Toph, and then also along came all the interesting blind jokes
Oh my
that they
God.
would make.
The blind jokes in the show are amazing.
And that's not to say that they're trying to make fun of Toph, but they're just. I think at one point they're flying over looking for the hidden library, through this desert, this vast wasteland, and then Toph's like, "There it is," and everybody's like, "What?" And then she replies, "That's what it'll sound like when you guys find it."
Yeah, right. I mean, if we're talking favorite blind jokes, I gotta go with when they're in Bossing Say putting up posters, and he's like, Sokka's like, "All right, Toph, you better come with me." And she's like, "Why? You think I can't put up a poster?" And she slaps it on the wall. It's backwards, and she's like, "It's upside down, isn't it?" And I'm like, that's they have a lot of fun with it. I don't think it's ever too mean, usually because it's Toph the one who's making the jokes,
or it's just like, "Guys, look, it's over there," and then Toph's like, "Where? Guys, come on." There's a lot of fun like visual gags with it too, like later in book 2 when they're being given letters and they're like, "Toph, your family wrote you this letter," and she just takes it and passes it to somebody. You know, it's like, what the f am I gonna do with it? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. It's kind of great.
It's pretty great. So yeah, I think Toph comes into the series with probably one of the biggest impacts for a character. The show is not the same after her arrival. It is only better for it. And but after that, we get another remarkable episode. We get Zuko alone.
Yeah. Now this is the episode I feel like kind of bringing it back to like one, also non-Fire Nation kind of antagonist.
Yes.
2, you get a sense of like, throughout the entire show, they always talk about like the war, right? Or like, and though you never really see much of this war, you see it in kind of other moments, but like the Siege of the North, you see the kind of Navy and their ground forces kind of marching into the North Pole. But outside of that, you never see any real fighting. And even here, you don't see fighting, but it's always alluded to, like these are soldiers that are fighting kind of closer by the front lines in this town,
Yeah,
and then they have to.
This feels like this episode really felt like the first time you felt the war, like the toll it was taking
on some people, specifically like this family that Zuko, had been brought to by the youngest child in them. Believe his name was Lee. They talk about how Lee's older brother is fighting off in the war, and then this kind of really dick-like, I guess, captain of this Earth Nation crew, and they're just warriors, right? They're not benders. He's the actual only bender of them.
I think he's the only one who bends,
and he's just really like he's just a terrible person. And you think like, oh wow, like once again, both sides, regardless is if you're Fire Nation or Earth Nation, like they have the appropriate baddies, like in their places. Like this guy is not.
He's just a big bully.
Exactly. And it's really, and then he goes and tells them, like, this family, like, "Oh, your son was captured, by the way. You know what happens to people that were captured? They put him on the front lines with no weapons," and like almost insinuating that like their son's gonna die. Like, he's just a goner.
Yeah, he's kind of a prick. And I like that. This episode is a real, it's a Western. It's Zuko rolls into town and deals with these people who are kind of throwing their weight around, and in the end he has to kind of set off into the sunset. But it's great. I like the visuals behind it. It really evokes that kind of, especially when you get to the final showdown. It has this kind of like showdown at high noon kind of feel to it. And of course, the ultimate tragedy is that upon his self-actualization of, he's
going to defend the people of this village and also
know who you are, own it. And then he is reviled for that. And it kind of speaks to the tragedy of who he is. But yeah, a really great episode. It's the only episode of the series that is dedicated specifically to one character. And then the series progresses. We get bitter. We get the chase, which is a cool episode. I know you don't like it, but
I rewatched it the other day, and I was just thinking, like, I like the pursuit, and just kind of like it really shows us this dynamic of the kind of the teams and as they work. But then I feel like the most important part about that episode is kind of the finale.
of course, when you get all of them fighting together.
Yeah, that's the most important part.
Yeah, and then so we have that. We have Bitter Work, where Aang learns earthbending, and Zuko learns a big talent that will come into play later. Lightning redirection.
Yeah, the lightning redirections.
It is very cool.
I will say, I don't know if you noticed this, but it actually in an episode in season 1, in book 1, the storm, where they're on the ship in the middle of the crazy rain and lightning, there's actually a spot, or like one kind of frame, where Iro is redirecting the lightning in the exact pose.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's great. Early foreshadowing of things to come.
Yeah, but I mean, continuing through that, I feel like the bulk of the kind of importance of book 2 is the stories of Ba Sing Se, or every, not the episode of Tales of Ba Sing Se, which is an interesting episode, but just as they enter the library, they lose Appa from this, with the sandbenders, and then you really have this whole passage of time that, all right, they have this new information on how to stop the Fire Nation. This idea of
the Day of Black Sun.
Yeah, exactly. And then they need to bring this to the Earth Kingdom King, because they're really the forefront of the war, right? It's the Earth Kingdom is leading, kind of, not the revolution, but like they're leading in the defense, as they are the biggest kind of land, the mass. They have the most soldiers, more than any of the Water Tribe or anything like that. And so it's imperative that they get this information to the king, but they are stopped by all the propaganda and ongoings of the Dai Li and the very bad
Ba Sing Se, as they call it. It's the impenetrable city, but it is also the city of walls and secrets, and we get this very pseudo almost North Korea inspired city, where no one mentions the war. There is no war in Ba Sing Se, and they have a guide who takes them through the city and only shows them specific things. And while it's not touched on too much, you see that there is a real big class issue. In world building alone, Ba Sing Se, we could probably do an entire podcast just on Ba Sing Se.
Yeah. I just feel like the main important parts are the introduction to this new, secondary antagonist. Yeah, almost even, I would even say, as a main antagonist at some point, is Long Feng, right?
Yeah,
the leader of the Dai Li.
I would call him a secondary, just especially because of what happens to him down the line. But yeah.
Now the Dai Li, they're like this kind of elite squad of what they're known as, like the cultural protectors of Ba Sing Se, but they're really, they're big brother in a way, right? They're looking out for everything, and
they're trying to maintain the status quo. Because Long Feng knows that if things changed, he might lose his power. But yeah, what we get from it is we get some very crazy mind control stuff with the character Jet coming back from season 1 or book 1, and the whole underground facilities. We get maybe the saddest 5-minute stretch of the series in the episode Tales of Ba Sing Se with the tale of Iro. I don't know how many people out there have shed a tear at a cartoon. This one might do it.
Yeah. It was both a tribute to Iroh's lost son,
Luten.
I forget, Luten, and also a solemn, a nice send off and goodbye for the passing of Mako, the voice actor of Iro.
Yeah, that was a pretty hefty loss for the show there, and that is a particularly sad episode. But this, we won't talk about it for too long, but this is where I think Iro really comes in as his character. We get this episode that really shows the depth of his character and the regret that that kind of defines him. That is, he led the siege of Ba Sing Se in the past, and that's what got his son killed, and he's using all of those life lessons in how he mentors Zuko, and that all kind of comes to a forefront in Ba Sing Se.
Yeah, not to mention, I feel like what's important in terms of the setup of Ba Sing Se is that it has this kind of this class division of along with its walls. Ba Sing Se is known for as like the city of the Great Walls, actually inspired by the Great Wall of China. Funny enough,
makes sense.
That exactly. But is that it is the city known for its large population of refugees that have come from, like, as a result of the war with the Fire Nation and people being displaced from their homes. Not unlike that of what's going on in Europe right now with all the happenings in the Middle East and things of the sort. Like it's so once again, kind of the fact that a children's show, includes these very real, very serious kind of socio-political topics into its programming and into its story is just really, like, once again, you got to hand it to the writers, the creators, that like this show has kind of transcended itself once again, from just the topical, it's a cartoon animation. It was something much bigger and still is. And then, looking at the relationship as how you kind of see that Zuko and Iroh kind of work their way through the system. Funny enough, like in the progression of the city, like they come in as refugees versus like Aang, they come in, almost as saviors of the town or the town.
They're kind of like celebrities.
Yeah, and then they kind of get their way right on up into like the main inner ring or whatever. One of the things, so very higher up, and it's but even with that kind of status that they have, they still can't get their way into an audience with the Earth King. It's very
it literally takes them doing their own siege of the castle to get an audience with the Earth King. And one of my favorites kind of action moments from this season of them just crashing through the front gates, and you get that some very cool earth bending stuff with Toph and Aang. Of course, this is right after the episode of Lake Laogai, which I think is notable for two reasons. One, we get this amazing confrontation between Iroh and Zuko. I think Iroh's monologue in this is legendary. I think it's time you start asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? What do you want? He forces Zuko to confront who he truly is, and Zuko is forever changed after that moment. And of course, the other thing being Jet's mind control and his eventual, although it is only implied in the original series, his eventual death. Yeah. Which, for a kid's show, to have a character who is very heavily implied to be killed is pretty intense.
Yeah. I feel like also the way it happened too, after like this kind of intense fight, great animation, great like incredible movements, and just kind of like as a sneaky move, just very like, oh god, it almost breaks your heart in a way, because it's like before everybody looked at Jet like, yeah, he was this kind of interesting antagonist for an episode in the first book, and then he kind of comes back as kind of like a changed person, right? Like he wants to help people, or in a way he wanted to help people before, but now it's like he wants to help people a little better.
Well, I think he in season 1 he wanted to help people, and he was willing to kill people to help people. And his whole thing is, he's that flip side of there are bad people on the good side, and I want to say he was the first major instance of that. But when we get him in season 2, he is actually, funny enough, morally in the right. He wants to take care of Zuko and Iro because he knows they're Fire Nation. He doesn't know exactly who they are, but he wants to take them down.
He wants to expose them also,
he goes about it the wrong way, which, again, that's the mark of a great antagonist, of a great, bad guy, is that they're doing the right thing. They're doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. But so yeah, when he is gravely injured, it's pretty sad. His freedom fighters stay with him, and then we never hear from him again. And while they never say he's dead in the series, that is the implication.
Toph makes us know that he's definitely not okay.
Yeah. And then we get the Earth King. We get Azula and her friends infiltrating the Earth Kingdom and infiltrating Ba Sing Se, disguised as the Kyoshi warriors. And then we get the finale, the Guru and Crossroads of Destiny, which I think we can kind of sum this stuff up pretty good. The Guru, it's
Aang's opportunity to learn the Avatar state in its true sense.
Yes,
so it's like he has a better understanding and kind of control of it, versus like in the first part of the book, like where it was supposed to be this easy. Oh, you could just enter in and out. Like, no, it then becomes this complex thing that takes its ideas from Buddhism and just other kind of
it's very
Eastern thought.
Yeah, like Eastern spirituality. The ideas of chakras, and that would go on to later be explored, not to the best effect in Legend of Korra, but yeah, it's a really cool idea of behind the Guru. And then Crossroads is kind of our big spectacle.
The finale of the show. It's Azula and her team has infiltrated Ba Sing Se and has kind of taken control of the Dai Li, and also now they're in position to kind of out the Earth King and really kind of jump on Team Avatar and their plans for the future.
Right? Yeah, they learn about the eclipse, and they capture Zuko, and they capture Katara. And I think I mentioned this to you. I've always seen the Guru and Crossroads of Destiny together as the Empire Strikes Back of Avatar. You have Aang learning from a wise mentor how to unlock a certain power. He finds out his friends are in danger and gives up his training early to go save them, only to have his ass thoroughly handed to him and barely escapes with his life. I think one of the big things from this is Zuko's ultimate failure of his character arc. He's given the opportunity to change, and he just, his daddy issues come roaring back to life.
Yeah, with the promises. After it seems like he's finally moved on too. Like he had his kind of whole transformations, bedtime sleep, in dreams that everything was going to be fine, and then temptation hit him again, and then he kind of went right back into his old ways. And it kind of leaves us, going into book 3, Team Avatar has kind of faced their worst defeat ever. The Earth Kingdom has almost fallen and kind of come under control of the Fire Nation. They know they've lost some friends. The Kyoshi warriors have something happened to them. They're not around anymore to help the team. Or at least they've been kind of ambushed, and something happened to them along the way.
It is unclear at this point in the show.
Exactly. Aang's Avatar state might have been damaged. He might have almost been killed in the Avatar state. Though
I think
Katara
technically
really ran in there.
Yeah, I think technically by the end of book 2, he did die and was brought back.
Thanks to Katara's mastery in waterbending, which we've kind of mulled over a bit. I want to just quickly add that over the course of after she received her training in the waterbending master, we see how awesome and amazing her skills have become by the end of book 2. you know, and then also into book 3, like she has really come into her own as becoming a waterbending master, and Sokka as well, outside of, you know, providing comedic relief, just in terms of like how he does with strategy, also kind of facing his own daddy issues in a way, but more of like just kind of showing that his dad, like, I am like really great, and his dad also becoming incredibly proud of him, and just like, you know, we get that small instance.
Well. when he is not high on cactus juice,
exactly,
he proves himself to be a pretty much a tactical genius. And
I think it plays its way into book 3.
Book 3, I think, is where he really comes into his own, as a serious, you know, contributing member of the group.
And then we also can't forget one of the greatest moments of book 2 is as Toph becomes captured as her parents want her to come back, and then becomes the development of one of the greatest techniques known to bending is metal bending, a derivative. I think that's the word.
Yeah, it is derived from
earth
metal
bending.
Yeah, earth bending. Excuse me. Yeah, it's one of the best moments of the season. It is. I love it because Toph is kind of she doesn't have much of a character arc across the series, and you know, I think you could say one of her character flaws is that she's kind of full of herself, but it is one of the pure delights of her character, and I love that this is just kind of, no, I am as amazing and badass as I think I am, and no, it's fantastic. I like the ending of this season because it is what I consider a false darkest hour, because even though everything has kind of gone to hell, they still have the Day of Black Sun, and until we get to that, we haven't reached the darkest point. But we're going into book 3, which has some of the darkest moments of this series.
You know, the team has finally, you know, Aang in a way has finally mastered earthbending, has dealt with, I wouldn't say master, but he knows it.
He knows it enough to you know, make use of it.
Exactly. And now is there, you know, Aang has awoken several months later. Was it months or weeks?
It's been, I think, like a couple of weeks. Enough that he has grown hair.
Yeah, Aang is full of, you know, this went from this bald monk to this black-haired kid, you know, his tattoo almost covered, and he's like, whoa, what? Like, he's on a Fire Nation ship, he doesn't know what's happening.
I love it. It's such a good status quo shakeup.
Yeah.
It's you know, everyone's on the run. He doesn't even look like himself anymore. And then meanwhile,
also talk about a really, like, while the show was airing, you know, like between books 2 and 3, I think I maybe had the most anxiety of like, oh my god, we're finally here, you know, like it's finally about to be the, you know, the Fire Nation. Then when it starts, I'm like, Aang has hair, probably one of the coolest like character costume like time skip like moments ever. Like I didn't. It's not that I didn't watch too much anime. I watched a few, but like I never got into Naruto or like One Piece or things like that. Things where like time skips were super evident, right? Maybe Dragon Ball from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, and you didn't kind of get that idea of like drastically changing a character's image across you know, episodes in American television, mainly because there's the chance you run the risk of hurting the marketing, the marketability of it, because, you know, but I think it's great. I've always loved the fact that the show progressively shows characters' hair getting longer. And you see
Zuko specifically.
You see with Aang. Everyone, as actually, I think, you know, like Sokka for 2/3 of the show, he's kind of got that his sides of his head shaved, but from book 3 on, his hair is
Sokka made it cool before Skrillex did. You remember that?
Yeah. He's got the he is the originator of that look. Just after the Pokemon Pidgeotto. But
there you go.
But no, I love the awakening. It's a good shakeup of the formula. Zuko is back home. He's got Mei as a girlfriend. He is a far cry from where we saw him last. Everything has changed.
Especially, I feel like the specific thing is that everyone is now under the impression that the Avatar is dead.
Yes.
And that Zuko is has been triumphant.
Azula tactically tells Ozai, voiced by Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, that Zuko killed the Avatar, of course, under the guise that she knows he's probably alive, and she is just setting Zuko up for another bit of manipulation.
Yeah.
Because she is literally the worst.
I'd agree with that.
But, so moving on from The Awakening, we get some good episodes. We get The Painted Lady. It's kind of this, like, environmental friendly eco-terrorism episode. We get Sokka's Master, which I know you really like.
I think it does an interesting job of, allowing, finally giving Sokka his time to shine. I know that there's a lot of complaints about some of the editing and, like, what are the timing, like, what is the time
it
that
is
goes by?
one day.
Does it at least it shows that it may have looked like it's a day, but I feel like there's a caveat to it.
It's definitely
but it's also how is someone like, Katara or Aang supposed to become a real waterbending master with only a day or two of training?
Yeah,
right?
it's fine. For the medium that it is in the show, it's fine. Yeah. It's a cool thing. We get Robert Patrick as Master Piandao, and we get Sokka's cool space sword, and he kind of this sneaky little tag of the White Lotus, which
I don't think we've mentioned at all in the entire thing of this, but it's always been sprinkled into us as Iro is this
drip
always
fed.
talking about. Yeah, he's always talking about Pai Sho in the series, and Pai Sho plays a very, very particular role, especially with the White Lotus tile in Pai Sho.
Right.
And we get a little bit of sprinkle of it in not, I think it's the desert episode or one of these episodes where they're seeking refuge out into Ba Sing Se. But anyways, and I think one of the next most important episodes in creating interesting backstory and world building is also the Puppet Master.
The Puppet Master, but before we go on that, because I love the Puppet Master, but I want to talk about the beach for 2 reasons.
This is the
3 reasons.
The antagonist
4
episode.
reasons. 1, we get some excellent character defining moments between the firebending Team Zuko, if you will. Him, Azula, Ty Lee, and May. They get their beach vacation. It's kind of like the Breakfast Club episode. We get some very funny moments of Azula having to act like a normal teenager.
Oh, God.
They are delightfully awkward. It's pretty great. We get, for a Nickelodeon show, a bizarre amount of fan service, which for this type of show, anime fan service is pretty common, and, a show can live or die by it. But for a Nickelodeon show, it was definitely unique that you didn't get that type of aspect of anime. Coming over to the American side, I think there was a lot of hesitation from the production, from the executives, of having an episode like that with some more revealing outfits for the characters. But overall, I think it's a good kind of homage to the staple of the beach episode in most anime series.
Yeah.
But then my personal favorite aspect of the beach is our first real, aside from his introduction, our first real look at Combustion Man. Combustion Man, who I think has one of the coolest, derived from another bending styles.
Yeah.
Obviously, as his name suggests, he creates explosions with his mind. I think when he first approaches the group, it is this great tense moment of what's about to happen, because at that point you don't know what his power is. He's got I love that all the music kind of drops out and it's just diegetic sound when they're fighting. The sound design of his attack is incredible. It is this cool popping kind of crackling noise before these really loud explosion.
Yeah.
It really sells the power behind him, and he's not someone that they can that in the middle of fighting him they can't really use tactics too much because they're too much on the defense to even think about it.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's just an enemy they have to run away from. It's just a force of nature.
I'll tell you what this show has really done well, and it is in terms of like this world, this idea, this bending as like a form. You know, they started out with just earth, water, fire, and air, right?
Right.
You know, and it's just how much more can you go from that? But then I love how they've always kind of mixed them up or kind of changed things. You know, like we kind of had it a little early on, right? You know, with in terms of water bending, like water also includes ice in the North Pole. What are they surrounded by? Like ice and these glaciers, you know, and that works its way into it. You know, it's the kind of sciences around. And then you when you have in book 2, they go into the swamp, right? And then you have these swamp guys, these dwellers, if you will. I forget this guy's name, the one that's in like the giant seaweed monster,
Poe or something.
Yeah, like he's bending the water around the vines and also just kind of the mud. And then you will see later on that Aang and Toph are bending both like water and mud mixed together, like outside of Ba Sing Se, you know, and then we get some real hardcore things. You know, you get lightning, like they can bend lightning out of like firebenders. It's derived from firebending.
And you get the combustion bending.
The combustion bending, metal bending.
And then let's move on on that topic. Let's move on to the Puppet Master, which introduces
fucking excuse my language, but blood bending?
Oh,
Are you kidding me?
So this is what I was talking about before when I said there is an enemy in the series that is not Fire Nation, that is maybe the creepiest and most like I feel like one of the most intense bad guys, and it's Hama. And I love that she is, I think, for this particular series, the only water tribe bad guy, and she is hands down creepier than Fire Lord Ozai, than Azula, because she was an innocent person and just got corrupted by her punishment and turned into this monster.
Oh my god!
I love the Puppet Master. It is a freaky episode.
Well, first of all, it reminds us about kind of like not the terrors of bending, but it's like, you know, Hama introduces blood bending as an idea like, oh, we have to make sure we use our bending in unique ways when we're not surrounded by the things that we use. And I was like, oh yeah, like I've used my sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah, she pulls water from like the grass and like a tree around her. It's like really like, you know, cuts it, like not cuts it, but like shrivels them up into dead things.
Like husks.
It's super powerful and super amazing, but it's also like you kind of see the damage around her as like you see the dead grass or it loses its color and everything. It's like, like, you know, kind of a blessing and a curse, like in a way.
It's freaky. You know what I love about this episode is I feel like a lot of times with some of these like, you know, villain of the week episodes, they get their comeuppance and then everyone kind of moves forward more or less having maintained the status quo. But Hama, when she gets arrested at the end, the damage is done. You know, Katara can't unlearn bloodbending, and Hama, she succeeds. Her goal was to pass on bloodbending so that way her legacy would live on, and she succeeds. Katara is forever cursed with that knowledge, and it's kind of a downer ending where you go like, oh my god, like...
I'll tell you what though, and maybe this is a little like, why are you crying about it in the end? Because, you know, she does cry about it and she feels like awful about it, that she had to use that power to kind of free herself. But a couple episodes later, she ends up using it again for personal reasons.
I will say, we'll get to the Southern Raiders. I know we're pushing time pretty long now, but so I think we can kind of skip ahead a bit. When we get to her thing, I feel like there's good reason why she uses it, and it's tied to character motivations. But let's skip ahead because we are kind of pushing for time a bit. So we get the Day of Black Sun, which, you know, is the day of the eclipse. We get this amazing, cool return of a bunch of awesome characters from the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, especially in part 1, you have all these great guys showing up. Book 1, excuse me. But I mean, yeah, you move on from that, and just the arcs that appeared during this I guess pivotal event. Like Zuko realizes that he doesn't want to be a part of this. Like that
He finally
he's more than
confronts
this.
his father, and in a very fantastic scene, he redirects lightning right back at him.
Yeah,
But I love.
though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying, and though we haven't spoken about Iroh's situation in book 3, during this entire time, he's actually been locked up, taken in as a Fire Nation prisoner, and he's used his time wisely to kind of bulk up, remain powerful, and then escape from prison. Yeah, he escapes, and because he's never been really a part of the kind of same ideas that his brother and the rest of the family, and maybe most of the Fire Nation army has had. He's always been the very worldly.
He learned early enough that kind of mentality.
No good can come from war.
Right. I mean, he learned the hard way. But yeah, we get Haru back. We get some of the freedom fighters back. We get the Boulder. We get the guys from the swamp. And it's this great siege. Sokka ends up leading the charge into the Fire Nation capital. They are on the cusp of winning, but because Azula found out about the eclipse back in the end of season 2, or book 2, excuse me, the Fire Nation is able to kind of hole up in a bunker, and the big, what I consider the true darkest, the lowest point, the darkest hour of Team Avatar is when they are forced to retreat, knowing that they just won't make it in time. And
that they have to leave all their friends behind as prisoners.
That's a pretty sad moment in the series. Aang thanking them for their sacrifice and just having to run because they have to survive another day. I think it's fantastic. I think it sets up the final stretch of the show. Zuko is officially left the Fire Nation side. He is on his way at the end of the episode to join the Avatar, and nothing's the same after that. You can say that a lot about several episodes in this series, but it's cool. We get we move on.
Coming next, we kind of get Zuko. He kind of wants to join Team Avatar, right? Because Aang at this point still hasn't learned firebending, and Zuko, wanting to kind of make amends, said, well, the best thing he could offer the team is to, one, apologize, and then two, I could also teach earthbending, but is met with a lot of backlash. Firebending. I don't know where that other bit came from. Firebending, and then he's met with the backlash of like, are you kidding me? You who've been after us for 2 seasons and 40 odd episodes, you're trying to join us now after all the betrayal that you've done?
It takes a lot of work. It takes him as much as almost dying at the hands of the Combustion Man to prove himself loyal to the team, and even then he still has to put in the work to earn their trust. Again, we get the Combustion Man back again. I think he's super cool in this. We get the great moment of Sokka hitting him in the head with the boomerang, which we learned in a previous episode is kind of his weakness, and which then leads to one of the more violent deaths in the series, where he just blows himself up.
It was pretty sad.
I thought it was epic, but it's rad. But
yeah. And then we'll later get the real teaching of firebending. Zuko realizes his powers aren't working for whatever reason. It's mainly because of the
performance issues. It happens to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not something to be embarrassed about.
So we get the first in a series of things called, the Zuko vacations, the Zuko trips.
Field trips with Zuko.
Exactly.
So we get the Firebending Masters. Very cool. Do you think the Dance of the Dragons is a reference to Fusion from Dragon Ball Z?
I mean, I'd like to think that it's fun knowing both kind of like things and then just putting them together. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
That's a fun episode because it is a little different than the others. You get it's kind of like Indiana Jones at parts.
I feel like there's a bit that we missed earlier when talking about there's an episode that happened before the Day of Black Sun, the Avatar and the Fire
Avatar and the Fire Lord, yeah.
And though Zuko and Aang have had their own relationship, there's also a relationship between them that kind of transcends themselves. Is that Avatar Roku is Zuko's great grandfather?
Yeah,
and so when you look, or I guess grandfather, I don't know about great grandfather.
No, it's his.
I think it's his mom's either father or grandfather.
He's a descendant of
Roku.
Avatar Roku.
Exactly, but also Aang is of Avatar Roku. So
he is
they already
the
have
reincarnation of him.
Exactly. So they already have like this kind of relationship that they both discovered at the same time during that episode.
And I think that lends itself to being that why, and also Aang's just friendly disposition. But I think that's what lends Aang to really being able to easily accept Zuko as one of the team. Sokka being slightly less trusting, but still just kind of one of the guys. He and Zuko have a fun prison break, two episode story. But Katara being the one who is the most untrusting.
She feels incredibly betrayed by Zuko after she offered to help him and heal him.
For good reason. She is totally validated in that mistrust. But that's, like you said, it leads to them tracking down the man who killed her mother.
Yeah.
And I really like the Southern Raiders because it's we get the reintroduction of blood bending. We kind of see Katara teetering on the edge of becoming the monster Hama wanted her to be.
This episode really gives also birth to a lot of other memes that like, oh, but my mother being dead is the worst thing ever.
Katara,
screw your turmoil. Like, this is the most important thing.
Katara's one-upsmanship of pain is a pretty funny meme. But yeah, so we get our field trips with Zuko. He puts in the work. He eventually gains everyone's trust. And then we get a really funny recap in the Ember Island Players.
Mm-hmm.
Really funny, one of the best recap episodes for any show. And then finally we arrive at the big day, Sozin's Comet.
Like a 4-part special
it is
the
feature
finale
length.
of the show.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, when it first aired, they aired it as a movie, basically. And just all 4 back to back to back to back.
Well, it's like you still got like the intercuts in between that, so like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. It's kind of like a Tarantino movie in that respect, right? And it's funny that like the Hateful Eight was then later re-released with extended version as like a mini-series.
But Sozin's Comet's cool. I don't know, it's probably not my favorite of the series, but it's such a cool end to the series. Everyone plays a really pivotal role in it.
Literally everyone too. It's like they give everyone a book ending in a way. Like you see the all the original masters, Zhong, the T-1000. Yeah, Piandao.
The T-1000.
I forget.
Boomy, Iro.
Boomy, like all these guys, like and their role as the White Lotus organization,
taking back Bossing. Say, I love the shot of Iro standing and like breathing in outside the walls, and the fire is raising and falling with his breath. It's very cool. Sokka, Toph, and Suki go and take down the airship fleet. Yeah,
and then Aang kind of goes on his own incredible journey. One, unlocking a new kind of avatar bending art form known as energy bending.
Yes.
Which will play a role in kind of the demise of the Fire Lord.
Yeah.
The almighty bad guy.
I personally don't mind it. I know there's a lot of people who don't like the energy bending because it does. The episode it's introduced is the episode that it comes into play. It never really comes up before that, so I know for a lot of people it kind of feels like this cop-out. I say it's a kid show, and they were never going to have the main character, a 12-year-old boy, murder a man.
Yeah.
So I say remember what show you're watching when you level that criticism at the show. But
and then you also have the amazing fight where now Katara's kind of paying back Zuko and him helping her. Like she's going to help him take down Azula. And
So
take back the Fire Nation.
The fight between Zuko and Azula is great, not because of its spectacle, and while the spectacle is great, I think the choreography and the animation in that fight is wonderful, but it is not played like... Okay, so like Aang versus Ozai is played like an action scene, especially when Aang unlocks the Avatar state, but Zuko and Azula, that fight, it plays out like a tragedy. And it is sad. By the end of it, when Azula loses, it is not a happy moment. It is not like... It shows such restraint on DiMartino and Konietzko's part that they understand that this is not a happy moment for Zuko. He is not glad that he has had to, put his little sister in her place and forcibly take away everything she's ever had. It is a sad moment, and for that split second, you finally see Azula as she is, a scared girl who has had the weight of the world put on her shoulders.
Yeah, and I guess in that, and we kind of come to the end of the show, and we realize this is not just a show for kids, just some regular cartoon. It is, we've said it a bunch of times throughout the last 2 hours, but I'll say it again. It is a show with complex and deep characters that go through these kind of incredible arcs, and maybe they're stuck within the confines of a 20-minute, 25-minute, runtime of kids show, but it just has exemplified that it really can be more than just that.
They all just feel so real and so human. And I think that, just there was such a care in the crafting of the world and the people that, nothing is basic. And I think that's why even, almost 2 decades out, it's still seen as one of the best, animated shows or shows in general ever made. I think that's why it is so loved, is because I feel like they could have, if they wanted to, this show could have been just as commercially successful and not tried as hard. Because I know shows that have been very popular with half the effort, but there's such a quality and a care put into everything that I think that's what, it raises it above so many other shows.
So funny, we think about how incredible and great that they've been able to accomplish a show like this. 1, for the time period, 2, for its format, and just like kind of like all around, like the kind of quality that this show exemplifies. But then, I don't want to go deep into it, but you take a dive into like why the movie was just a failure. There was an adaptation, how it did not, and there's a lot of things you could put to blame on that, but there's a sense of like why wasn't it as successful, and there's a lot of reasons, between the casting,
we could do an entire
writing
podcast on M. Night's mess of a movie.
But with the shows now being re-released on Netflix, and distributed now, they're available for, I would say, almost everyone has Netflix subscription or access to a subscription to count.
Know someone who does.
Exactly, and then with the news that they're making a new adaptation of Avatar as another, like, a Netflix series, which at first seemed interesting. Like, where could they go wrong? What mistakes could they make that? Well, and what things that could they do better?
It's funny you say what mistakes could they make, because listen, when they announced
they have a 2-hour movie that they can look at to see what mistakes they can
I will
make.
tell you this: when they first announced the live action adaptation for Netflix, I was hesitant because I was like, we've been down this road and I know where it's going to lead, and it's only going to disappoint in the long run. But when they said, DiMartino and Konietzko are involved, they're running the show, and I said, okay, well, with that being the case, the driving forces of what made the original series so good are behind it. We could have something here. This could be great. Well, I mean, it was nice while it lasted.
Yeah, because then came the news, unfortunately, that they had left the project due to creative differences, which is the saddest story in all of the realm of, I don't want to say Hollywood, but like just that kind of ecosystem over there. It's always creative differences, man. You know.
So creative differences have led to a lot of good and bad things in film and television. But I feel like this was a series where, if the reports are to be believed, Netflix, the executives there, I don't think they understood what made Avatar so great. I don't think they realized just how integral certain aspects of Avatar were to its overall success.
Yeah.
You hear things like they wanted, and again, I don't know if any of this is true, but they wanted to age up the characters into like their late teens, early adulthood. They wanted
to add more violence, a little more romance.
Well, I've heard romance. I've heard they wanted to add like a lot more sex involved. They wanted this to probably be Game of Thrones, which I almost understand because Game of Thrones is cool, is really good. We'll talk about it later, but that's not Avatar. That was never part of Avatar's winning formula, and I don't know. It's
well, and it's funny that I like that you use the phrase like formula, because then it comes into like the thought of like, all right, well, do you do what just already works, or do you try something new that might also work? And like as I would say, in a way, we're diehard fans, right? We are attached to the show through nostalgia. And
we spoke about the show for 2 hours. I think it's safe to say we have some pretty strong feelings about this series.
Yeah. Versus maybe they also want to attract like a new audience, a more modern audience, and like so they want to try a formula that works for this time and age. In which who's to say what's works?
But that's understandable. But at the same time, we know it would work because it was the #1 trending series on Netflix for like I think months.
But do you want to be able to predict everything that's going to happen and just see the same show in live action? Is the thing. Do you want the same exact thing but with real people and animation?
Kind of.
Or
listen, there's some stuff where I say adaptation's good. There is room in the story of Avatar: The Last Airbender where they could have changed things and I would have been okay with. For example, a lot of Book 1, I think there's a lot of fat you can trim out of that. The Great Divide is, I think, widely considered the worst episode because it doesn't really do anything.
I'll tell you what that the show could do, and I was talking to you about this the other day. It's just the idea of they were locked in a children's television show format of 20-something minutes. They had to deal with something that we referred to as economic storytelling.
Right.
And, things just tended to happen to be, dialogue was a lot more direct, and everybody kind of had to put out their feelings and things without...
there's a lot of very direct...
A lot more of cadence.
A lot of very direct dialogue just to save time, because when you got 20 minutes, we can't have...
You got to make the use of it. And I understand that. And that is where I see the biggest improvement that could be made. They can really take their time. If they're going to make this 10 episodes, an hour long each, or something, something along the series format that most programs have these days, like that would help tenfold.
Yeah,
alone.
I think it had the potential. Like, there's certain aspects. Yeah, you can change. You can take out episodes that probably don't need to be there. You could broaden episodes that could have stood to be longer and benefited from more time to flesh out their ideas. You could do things like putting the idea of energy bending at the beginning of the series. That way it doesn't feel like it comes out of nowhere at the very end. There's a lot you could do. But doing things like aging up the characters when their ages are so integral to their characterization. Increasing the violence when the show is honestly violent enough as is. Adding sex where sex wasn't even a part of the show. I mean, obviously it's marketed towards children, but like there's nothing about the show that would have benefited from having, like sex scenes and stuff. There's already tons of romance in the series. I even hear stuff like they wanted to cast a bunch of white actors, and this is ground we've covered before.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't want to see, and I'm sure we all don't want to see failure happen again or ensue again.
I just don't want to be hurt again.
But I mean, with all that being said, hopefully it comes out and it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm very hopeful about these things. You know me.
Yeah.
I try to remain. I was even hopeful about New Mutants. I really was. And though I don't agree it was complete dog shit, like that's what I'm hoping. I don't want to. I hope that this the Avatar movie was dog shit. Please don't let the show be dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I hope it's good. But at the end of the day, even if it sucks, we still have the original series. We still have Legend of Korra. And while Legend of Korra we'll get to another day, it's definitely not as good. I think it's still a fantastic series, except for season 2, and so we'll get there. I have a lot to say about season 2 of Korra, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you still have the original run of Avatar. It's one of the best series. You can't go wrong with it. And on that, is there anything? I know we had talked about our favorite little bending little niches, little niche uses of the bending. I for one like the Dai Li's use of their gloves and shoes as handcuffs, as bullets, as they can be like Spider-Man with it, where they're crawling on the walls.
Yeah. So I'm always been privy to the earthbending styles. So when Toph came out into a metal bending suit during the Sozin's comment, I thought that was incredible.
That is a really rad scene.
Yeah, way to come into your own with your own style and everything. Just amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. We get to see the evolution of that later in Korra, but for that first moment where she kind of rolls into it and is slapping people to the wall, that's
just a testament to how badass her character is.
Yeah. Toph's maybe the best character in the series.
But I think on that note, in reality, Zach, people always have this podcast if they want to come back and listen to it.
It's true. We'll always be here. We're never going to stop. You can't make us.
But on that note, I want to thank the listeners for their time.
Yes,
I want to thank you, Zach, for joining me.
Thank you as well, Chris. Yeah, thank you to the listeners. We appreciate your ears.
You can follow Script or Screen at Script or Screen on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will see you next time.
Bye.